Senator, I want to pivot the conversation for a moment. There was a fascinating case that was seen in the Supreme Court this week that has a huge implication potentially on a wealth tax in the future because it gets at the very issue of whether the U.S. government constitutionally can tax unrealized gains. You've been a proponent of a wealth tax for quite some time. This case obviously is not about a wealth tax specifically, but the mechanics of it may have an impact. And I wanted to get your thinking and understanding of how you're looking at that case and as it may relate to a wealth tax in the future.
You know, part of the point I think we have to look at is that the very, very, very wealthy have now figured out that they don't actually have to have any income in order to do everything they want to do, in order to have access to their wealth. Look at Elon Musk. When he decided that he wanted to buy Twitter, he said, you know, I'll just show the bank that I have this bucket of stock. And he said, I'm going to take all my Tesla stock, I'm going to put it over here, and look what happens. He can borrow against that, and then he can make the purchase of Twitter. The billionaires can buy their yachts, can finance their, 87-room houses, all on the notion that they never cashed out. They never sold any. And that creates a terrible problem in this country because it means the people who are paying taxes are Boston public school teachers instead of the wealthiest people in this country.
So I want to try something. So, Senator, I want to try something out on you. What do you think about the idea of, rather than a wealth tax per se, saying that anybody who is going to take a loan against their assets of some number, we can make up the number, we can make it a big number, but a loan that's collateralized against assets at some level, that money gets taxed?
Look, what you're doing is driving in the right direction because you figured out the way that the billionaires finance their lavish lifestyles without paying any taxes.
But isn't that potentially a fair way for those who look at the fairness? But for those who look at the fairness argument and say, look, unrealized gains are unrealized gains. But if in this case you can specifically say, look, these are the equivalent of unrealized gains, let's tax that.
It is the minimalist approach to it, and it certainly moves in the right direction. But let me make my point. You know, if we just said, if you've got more than $50 million in assets, and we put in place a 2-cent tax on your wealth, and by the way, people pay property taxes all the time on unrealized gains. You pay your property taxes on your home. But a 2-cent wealth tax, think what that would mean in this country right now. It would mean that we could provide universal child care for every one of our babies. We could put much more money into our public school system. We could provide free post-high school technical school, 2-year college, 4-year college. We could cancel all student loan debt, and we could still have a lot of money left over. The very wealthiest in this country are paying only a tiny, tiny fraction of their wealth, while ordinary Americans, middle-class families, firefighters, and teachers are paying a much bigger share. And that's just fundamentally unfair. In a democracy, progressive taxation means that those who are wealthier end up paying more on their taxes, and that's not what we have right now.
Senator Warren, it's an income tax that we have right now, and I think the idea of a wealth tax throws a lot of people off. And you can point to the idea of real estate taxes, but in reality, your home is not reassessed every year and pay higher and higher prices on it. And when you do have towns that get overly aggressive on real estate taxes, you end up pushing out the older people who are no longer working every day. We drive senior citizens out. That's what happens in our area, too, when things go to extremes like that. I understand an income tax. I understand the way of not... But can I just finish very quickly, and then I'll cede the time back over? I understand the idea of wanting to get at the idea that these wealthy people are living off of things. And I think Andrew's idea is a good one of saying if you're using your equity as something that you're living off of as income, you should be taxed on that. But the idea of just a wealth tax in itself really upends things. And we can say that we're going to only go after $50 million and above, but we all know that income taxes started out that way, too. And it's gotten to be a bigger and bigger part of everybody's number. And the idea of an unrealized gain that I never see being taxed is anathema. That just doesn't at all seem fair in any way, shape, or form, and it seems impractical to try and figure out how to actually figure it out.
Let me be clear. As I said, I think Andrew is moving in the right direction. I'm just making the case overall because the system is no longer fair. When we first put an income tax in place, remember, we had marginal rates that were vastly higher than they are today for the very wealthiest in this country. The idea was the richer you are, the total number of dollars you pay will be more because your income is higher. And so you want to get a fraction of that. That seems fair across the board. That has now been stood on its head. So the people who are paying the highest percentage of their wealth are middle-class families. And the wealthiest, the billionaires in this country, are paying virtually nothing. Jeff Bezos pays a lower marginal tax rate than a Boston public school teacher, and that is fundamentally wrong. And the idea that you say, oh, I'm worried that billionaires won't be able to be represented in Congress and taxes will get out of hand, give me a break. It's the billionaires who just got the tax cut from Donald Trump that's turned out to be, what, nearly $3 trillion? Most of that money went to millionaires and billionaires. It made the tax system even worse. You want to have a democracy? It's got to be that everybody pays a fair share, and that fair share should have something to do with the kind of wealth you've got. Right now, we're putting that burden on the middle class and giving billionaires a free ride. I think that's wrong.